Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq, with daily insight on the Nasdaq-100 index, or the NDX, which is made up of 100 of the largest domestic and international non-financial innovative companies listed right here on the Nasdaq stock market. The NDX has been the barometer for U.S. large cap growth and also one of the best performing indexes over the last decade and a half, not to mention one of the most liquid index ecosystems in the world. Joining me this afternoon, we have McCormack, factor and core equity strategist at Invesco, to discuss weekly trends in the Nasdaq-100, as well as a couple of new ETFs in the Nasdaq-100 reconstitution happening this Friday. Ryan, it's great to have you with us. Let's quickly review on your first chart here, weekly performance of the Nasdaq-100.
Yeah, so I think as we look at Nasdaq-100 and market action, right, still grappling with the reopening trade as vaccine distribution is slowly beginning worldwide. You have QQQ and QQQM trading down 0.31%. And QQQJ trading up 0.79%. So QQQM and QQQJ are the new additions to what we're calling our innovation suite. QQQM is the traditional 40 Act ETF that also tracks the Nasdaq-100, with QQQJ tracking the Nasdaq Nextgen index, which are kind of 100 of innovative up-and-coming companies, essentially the next 100 largest companies listed on the Nasdaq exchange, ex-financials outside of the Nasdaq-100.
Yeah, I think QQQJ is going to be a lot of fun to watch. Ryan, let's talk about the Nasdaq-100 reconstitution happening this Friday. Explain to the viewers what that means and the additions and deletions we'll be watching.
Yeah, so you know, you're getting your annual reconstitution, a pretty big event where you're essentially looking at setting up the indices for the upcoming year. And I think it's interesting this year, and why I wanted to include QQQM and QQQJ, because you get some movement between the Nasdaq Nextgen index and the Nasdaq-100. Right, there's some shifting around and new leadership where you get some of these up-and-coming companies that make the leap from next generation into the Nasdaq-100. And as you look this year, the changes will become effective after the close this Friday, December 18th. We have 6 new names joining the Nasdaq-100, 3 of which are coming from outside of the next generation index, 3 of which are coming from the next generation index. So the 3 from outside would be American Electric Power, utility company, mainly servicing the Midwest, that had a listing change from New York Stock Exchange to NASDAQ back in October. They're also adding Peloton, obviously a household name now after this year, as you look at how they've reinvented the way that fitness classes are consumed, particularly in the post-COVID world. And then lastly, Match, a very well-known online dating service that has a number of different websites that cater to that online dating community. The three new additions that were taken from the Nasdaq Next Generation, the graduates, as we're calling them, Marvell Technology, Okta, and Atlassian. So exciting to see those companies move up. Now, taking the place of 6 companies within the Nasdaq-100 index that are now moving down to the Nasdaq Next Generation index are BioMarin, Citrix Systems, Expedia, Liberty Global, Take-Two Interactive, and Ulta Beauty. Now, you know, the movement from Nasdaq-100 down to Nasdaq Nextgen is not necessarily bad news for these stocks. And as you look since 2009, the companies that have been moved from the Nasdaq-100 down into that next 100, on average, show 18.8% of 12-month performance following that move down, with a median 12-month performance number of 9.6%. Beyond that, 17 companies were eventually added back into the Nasdaq-100 after moving down. On average, that took those companies about 2.8 years. So, you know, the movement back and forth is something that we see every year, and it's to be expected. And, you know, not to say that some of these companies can't move back up. In terms of the largest number of additions, looking at the Nasdaq Next Generation, so 41 new names joining the ranks. Outside of the 6 companies I just outlined, I think it's interesting to note that there were a lot of solar-driven companies. Companies like First Solar, like Solar Edge, like Enphase Energy, or Sunrun. You know, I think that speaks to this emphasis on clean and renewable energy, as we're starting to see that preference and certainly the growth of that underlying theme really blossom this year. Beyond that, some somewhat household names that are joining Nasdaq Next Generation: Etsy, Beyond Meat, Penn National Gaming, DraftKings, and Datadog, to name a few. But always exciting to see the reconstitution, to learn some of the new faces, so to speak, in both the Nasdaq 100 and Nasdaq Nextgen, and really continuing the emphasis and commitment to reinvesting in businesses and remaining at the forefront of innovation.
I would agree with you, Ryan, and I also think it's very encouraging to see that we have such a robust mix of sectors being represented in the Nasdaq 100 and Nasdaq Nextgen. Ryan, it's great to have you with us as always. Thanks for joining me on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.